All right. Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us for our candid conversations around the essentials of Black fatherhood. And we are just excited to see you all logging on and joining us on tonight. This is our first kind of public showing and public announcement about the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. My name is Latrice Rollins. I serve as the Vice President of this network. So honored to serve alongside these wonderful women. So excited for you all to hear about the network and the great work that we have going on, and just the wonderful women and their experiences that are connected to us. So we are doing this in honor of Women's History Month. We are also doing this in honor of Social Workers Month. We are just, yes, Dr. JL, we are lit. We are just so turned and excited about this work that we're about to launch into together. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to some of our elite scholars, our BFFs, to introduce themselves. And we'll just go in the order that they're shown here. Just you all briefly share your name, your institution, your organization or your business, your job title or position, as well as your discipline and profession. Welcome again, everyone.
I'm not sure if Katrina has arrived yet, so we will start with whoever's here. Okay, so Melissa.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Special good evening to Dr. Rollins and Dr. Lemons. I'm so excited about our conversation that we're going to have this evening. So my name is Melissa Buckley, Dr. Melissa Buckley. I am a faculty member at Coppin State University in West Baltimore, Maryland. Quick sidebar, for those that have been keeping up with the 14, almost 15-year HBCU Maryland lawsuit, guess what, y'all? The governor signed on the dotted line today. That lawsuit is over, and our 4 HBCUs will be, I mean, it's not going to completely eradicate the wrongs of yesteryear, but it's a really great step in the right direction. So just wanted to share that. I am an assistant professor in our social work department. We have an undergraduate social work program. And I see somebody said that they're a Morgan State alum. So am I. I'm a very proud Morgan State alumna. And as mentioned, I do teach in our social work department. So my discipline is social work. I'm a very, very, very proud social worker. I love this profession. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Akina?
So good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Joaquina Cobreth. I am one of the newest members to the BFF, so I'm super excited. Thank you for all the warm welcomes that came out last week. The institutional organizational affiliation. Okay, so let me go back. I am the DPH Fatherhood Initiative with the Georgia Department of Public Health. The DPH Fatherhood Initiative is about 2 years in. And so we're still in our infancy stage, but we have made lots of waves in fatherhood in our state. We have gained some great momentum through collaborations and partnerships where I know Dr. Latrice Rollins, but I also have to give a shout out as a Morehouse School of Medicine alum. So I got to throw that out there. In addition to that discipline, so or profession. So as the Fatherhood Initiative State Lead, that's my title. I oversee the initiative in and of itself, building collaborations, increasing capacity across partners statewide. And I also work to coordinate events and meetings and a number of other activities so that we are making certain that we are doing this. And I have a dog. I just knew that would happen as soon as I got on this meeting. So, anywho, we are, thank you, Portia, because it's so distracting. But we are doing lots of work and excited about the work we're doing, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Awesome.
Well, good afternoon and good evening for some wherever you are. My name is Avis Files, and I am a fatherhood practitioner in the great state of Ohio. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Justice Files LLC. We work with the urban core to empower the urban core, the community, so that they can succeed in family life. I focus on fathers around in the area of infant mortality, around unapologetically lifting up the African-American father. And I also specialize in working with young fathers as well. I am excited to be. Don't y'all think that logo is dope? I said I'm gonna say our logo because I belong to the group, right? So that logo is dope.
Claim it.
And so I am so excited to be here tonight.
Nye.
Hello. Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. I'm Nigel Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of Young Men Strong. It's an umbrella organization that I founded back in 2012 that links businesses, organizations, agencies, and firms that are empowering, educating, and uniting African-American men as well as young men and boys through media, consulting, and mentorship. I'm also the editorial director of Thoughts Magazine, which is the essence magazine for Black men. I do it as well as for women. I am the author of Raising John's Boy. My book was just published last year. I'm very grateful for it. This is specifically for single mothers who are raising African-American sons on their own. I'm also a mental health practitioner, a social activist, and I'm also known as in New York City as the Single Moms Coach, where I help to empower and inspire single mothers who are raising sons solo. I am super happy to be here. Thank you, Dr. Lemons. Thank you, Dr. Rollins. And I am ready to just super excited to be a part of this group and ready to get going. I'm super excited.
Awesome.
Azawya.
All right, I think it's my turn. Yep.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Azawya Israel. I'm also a new member of the network. My most recent institutional affiliation was with Penn State University. I served as a liaison on Capitol Hill, trying to help connect or create this bridge between research and policy. So connecting congressional staff members with researchers in order to make an impact there. Recently relocated back to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where I work as a consultant for fatherhood practitioners across the nation, some of which that are on the call. I'm really happy to see all of you. And my discipline and my profession is in, my background is in human development and family studies. And from there, I switched over into the public policy space because I really wanted to help fix some of the underlying issues that we see at an institutional level when it comes to Black fatherhood and Black families. And I'm so excited that this network exists. Like, I feel like it should have been in existence years ago when I was in school and just struggling to figure some of this out. So I'm so happy to be connected to all of these wonderful professionals trying to make this bridge and help us see Black fathers in a more positive light in who they are. So happy to see everyone.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Erica Lewis, and I'm an assistant professor at University of Maryland, Baltimore, so in the School of Social Work. I'm a lot of things, but I am tired today. I just received my second dose of the vaccine, and I am nodding off. So please, if I have that church nod, just bear with me. I'm so excited. It just feeds my soul to see people who look like me doing the work for people who look like me. And so I'm super excited about this collaboration. So yes, welcome everyone.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. Hello everyone, my name is Felicia Murray. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Social Work at Tarleton State University in the Lone Star State of Texas. I have my PhD in family studies. So I am really kind of a intervention and prevention sort of practitioner just from my academic background. And I am, just like someone else said, super duper excited that this network exists. and just happy that we as Black women can come forward and talk about our experiences working on behalf of Black fathers and really partner in a way that will, I think, raise awareness about all of the wonderful things that are happening with Black fathers and Black families. So I'm excited to be a part of this.
Last but not least, Jarya.
Hello, my name is Jarya Strozier. I'm at Virginia Tech, but I went to Virginia State University, which is a HBCU. So shout out to the HBCUs. I'm currently a doctoral candidate at Virginia Tech. Right now, writing out my proposal for my dissertation. And I am also, I studied particularly the intersections of race, gender, and weight as it pertains to Black women. So with the Black feminist focus in Black female bodies as they enter medical spaces. So looking at that, I'll have a background in public health. I worked in communities in Virginia and rural and urban communities. So I'm just so excited to be here. I don't study fatherhood specifically, but my partner is have children and he's a non-residential father, and just his experiences and watching him navigate institutions and systems that I didn't even realize how difficult it was until really having that experience and being around him, and also helping him navigate that, which is extremely very different and difficult. So I'm very encouraged to be a part of this community, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so you all, this is just a portion of the BFFs. And so if you can just imagine, just from what you heard, the small little bit you heard from these women, extraordinary women, you can imagine what all this network will be able to do in this space. We are so excited. And I got so excited, I didn't even really say where I am, who I am, or anything besides my name. So I'm an assistant professor at Morehouse School of Medicine in our Prevention Research Center. I'm just a fatherhood champion, honestly, and also a graduate of Spelman College. And so I was just so pleased to connect with Brianna Lemons. She is going to be our next speaker. She is the president of the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. She is my Spelman sister and fellow social worker. And I believe, she says I'm a godsend, but I believe she's a godsend as well. And so we work together on this network and just trying to, make sure that we get the work done. And so I'm pleased to turn the floor over to her to tell you a little bit about our network and why we are doing this work.
Thank you so much, Latrice, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We realize that there are a lot of other places you could be right now, and so we're thankful that you have chosen to join us on this evening. As Latrice mentioned, my name is Brianna Lemons, and I am currently an assistant professor in the School of Social Work at Baylor University. So I wanted to sort of start by framing our discussion by talking a little bit about this idea of Black women in fatherhood. As we each approach this work from our various different vantage points, we often get this question, and we've talked about this among ourselves as a network, that as Black women doing this work in the field of fatherhood, we're often challenged and questioned about why we do this work, what we know about fatherhood, what we believe about fathers, and the like. And so I thought that while we have you here with us, before we get into the discussion, it would be important to frame tonight's discussion by just saying a little bit about this and kind of addressing this question of why we do this work and what we believe about it. So one of the first things that I'd like to say is that we all have a stake in the Black family, and that as Black women, we understand and we know that we will never be men. So we just put that out there to say we will never be a man, all right? But we all have a stake in the success and the well-being of Black families. And we believe that if we can strengthen Black fathers, we can in turn strengthen Black families. And so that's really foundational to our beliefs as a network. In addition, we also believe that there's a need for reconciliation work. And what we mean by this is that we know, as Jarya just kind of alluded to, we know that historically Black men have not had favorable relationships with societal systems. And we also know that women are often at the forefront of those systems. And so we believe that Black men and the world need to see Black women standing in solidarity with them as a way of reconciling broken systems and righting historical wrongs. And so we believe that this work that we are doing as a collective is a part of the reconciliation process. We also believe that we offer a unique perspective on fatherhood. Clearly, we all see that we're all women, but we believe that we bring a unique perspective to the understanding of fatherhood. We enter this work as wives and confidants of Black men, as daughters of Black men, as mothers of Black boys and men. And this perspective, we believe, is needed in order to fully understand the impact that Black fathers have on society. And then finally, we believe that there is a need for breaking barriers and making space for Black women in fatherhood. We believe there's a need for breaking barriers regarding who gets to engage in this work. For so long, it was thought that, well, men are the only ones that know about fatherhood because they're men. But what we're trying to do here through this organization is really to break that barrier and to say that, no, we're not men, but yes, we do bring a unique perspective and that we too can engage in this work. Many Black women we know are doing this work really undercover or with little recognition. And I actually had a conversation about this with one of our BFFs, Avis Files, recently, and she was mentioning how many times she would go out and do groups and she would put her husband out at the forefront, like, you do the group, you know, because she knew that some folks would look at her as a woman and say, well, what do you know, right? So we really want to say to Black women who are out here doing this work that you don't have to do it undercover and with little recognition. We want to make space for it for you. And we know that right now in the climate that we're in, that representation matters in all spaces. And so we want to make space for representation of Black women in fatherhood. And we also want to be a source of encouragement for Black women to do this work unapologetically. So I'm going to move on. I had a couple of other things here, but we're going to share this PowerPoint just so that you can know a little bit more about who we are and what we're about. I don't want to belabor this. I want to move forward right into the discussion. And so I am going to move in that direction now, just so that we have plenty of time for discussion and questions as well in the end. So our first question is, and this is for our panel of BFFs, consider the quote, "Who we are determines what we see." In other words, how we see ourselves, how we see others, is a reflection of ourselves. With this in mind, how has what you've seen or experienced in your own personal life shaped how you view the role of Black fathers in your life, in the lives of your children, in your work, etc.?
Thank you, Dr. Lemon. So, you know, I was thinking about this question a lot earlier. And, you know, how I came to be a fatherhood researcher is really based on my social work experience as a practitioner. I was a child welfare worker in the CPS system for a number of years. And reflecting back on my experiences there, I was not, if I was to be quite honest, a strong advocate for fathers and connecting them to services. And we can talk forever about why that is. But for me, doing research on fatherhood is a way to do that kind of reconciliation work that you talked about earlier, Dr. Lemons, and to really try to figure out and not use I would say, the nuclear family as a measure for how we view our Black families and our Black fathers. And I think that's where we get stuck, is where we use this kind of European way of understanding what fatherhood is and what fathering is. When I look back on my life and just those of people that I've grown up with, and just even doing some of the research, that fathering happens in many different ways. It doesn't have to be from a biological father. It can be from a grandfather. It can be from an uncle, a neighbor. And my own research shows that that many fathers that I've worked with say that, yeah, they got some things from their biological fathers, but they also got something from fathers in the community, fathers in their churches. So I think that for us, we have to really be mindful about that and think about how we define and understand fathering, because that is the actual raising of a child. So to me, it doesn't necessarily matter that, whether they're biological or not, is whether or not they get the lessons and that rearing that they need to turn into positive adults. So those are the sorts of things that I'm more interested in when we talk about the impact of fathers. And we can scour the Black community. I'm sure all of you have experiences of people that you've known growing up that have had some sort of impact on you, some positive male role model. And I feel like that is a place of strength and a place that we can really build from, and to stop always going to the nuclear family, because the Black family is really multidimensional. And they take so many forms. So I think it's important for us to kind of not just stay with those intact families, because that's definitely important, but family forms look very different in 2021. And we should try to understand all of those and how fathering shows up in those families.
Latrice, thank you, Felicia. Latrice, you want to go ahead and answer?
Sure. So I have told plenty of people I'm a daddy's girl. And so that is the lens that I've worked through, understanding that fathers are wanted by their children, whether they're in the home or not. And so whatever I can do, especially for a father who is trying to be engaged, I want to be able to make sure he has those resources and services to do so. I, like Dr. Murray was saying, I have uncles, I have grandfathers, a lot of different men who were so important to my life and to my development as a young lady, knowing what to expect from other men and how to be treated, all of those things. I got a lot of love from the men in my life. And so it was disheartening to enter into the social service profession and find that there's so many disparities in the gaps in services that they receive and the way that they are viewed. And so, that's my charge, to make sure that we take back and reclaim that narrative, making sure that we're showing positive examples of fathers, and making sure that, again, those that are stepping up, doing what they need to do, that there aren't barriers and challenges in their way.
Jarya?
Hi, yes. With being real transparent with, you all as a community, I didn't have a father growing up, and I met my partner in the middle of a doctoral program, and we had a daughter. And so he is, just dealing with being a non-residential father with his older two children, and now our child, due to, different fathers have different scenarios, the criminal justice system, and even thinking about the Black community and the criminal justice system. So now I am a single mom in a full-time PhD program. It's a lot. And so knowing his heart and how he does want to be with us and with his other children, and even trying to navigate all the systems as a single mother, sometimes I step in, for him, and it's a very tangled web. And also, as you said, Dr. Linden, knowing the heart of someone, and of course, growing up without a father, I want my daughter to experience something different that I didn't have. So I'm gonna do what I can in order to make sure he's a part of her life, being that he wants to. And I find that even, before his incarceration and seeing those, the different institutions throughout society that he had to navigate as a single father, that was a lot to experience. And then me also having to step in. And I also think about the fathers and the families that don't have the if we could be, transparent again, class, resources, assets that we have as women in these amazing roles and all of, this network, and just thinking about those families. So yeah, it's a lot in that experience, but I also want to spare time and give other people opportunity to speak as well.
Thank you, Jarya. So we'll move on to the next question. Latrice, I'll turn it over to you.
Right. So as advocates for Black fathers, we know and fundamentally believe that they play an essential role in Black families, as we've been talking about tonight. We also know that we are a long way from actually believing this on a societal level. I like to call it making that rhetoric a reality. If you ask somebody, what do you think about fathers? You think they play a role? People will say yes. But in the practice and in services, then we see something else coming out. So the question is, this can make the work really challenging when we see this kind of two different things happening, one in word and one in deed, right? So what has surprised you in this work about how others view the role of Black fathers, and how have these views shaped your work?
Well, again, good afternoon, everyone. And so let me start by saying that nothing surprised me when it comes to African-American men, because we live in a racist society. So everything that I started to do and everything that I thought about doing and working, and particularly with young fathers, I knew that was there, right? But what did surprise me at times were how I would work with other African-American women who went to school to be social workers and counselors and help in the helping profession, who really didn't help. And so I found myself in an advocacy role that I didn't know I was even going to go there. I'm just trying to do the work. I'm just trying to serve the young fathers, help get in their heads, make a team, do the work. And now I'm the person that come in the room. They like, here she go. She gonna say something about fathers. She gonna say something about the African-American father. I'm like, every time I'm gonna say it. Do not get it twisted. I'm gonna say it every time. I think the other thing that surprised me was the Good Old Boys Network, the Good Old Boys African-American Fatherhood Network, that snickered and laughed at me, that said she must like all the men, and I got a whole husband and a good one too. She must like all, she trying to get with all these dudes, whatever. But the non-support, I've been in spaces where I would watch men give other men opportunities, and I can stand toe to toe with them, and I couldn't get that same opportunity. So having to really say, here I am, and be that voice, that was surprising to me. And then the last question that says, what advice would you give to the Black woman that's doing the work? Be unapologetically you. Don't waste time like I did, trying to be in the shadow, like, let the men go first, let the men go first. I'm called to this work. I'll be here. I'm going to continue to do the work. And, for those brothers that don't want me there, you should move over, because I'm coming, bro, coming.
I love it. I love it. Joaquina?
So first off, I really wanted to say, and I want to acknowledge everyone's input that has, provided that this evening, and just say thank you to Dr. Lemons as well for recognizing the practitioners in this work, but also recognizing the personal and lived experience of the ladies and gentlemen on tonight's platform. When I think about kind of the first question, I was thinking about Black fathers are kind of non-existent almost, even to us, right? So I was thinking about, it's almost like taboo, like nobody wants to talk about the Black father, like he's just completely absent in every way, not just in the family, but that he's not even existent in the earth, right? And so it's just quite interesting. I was surprised by that. As much as I know racism exists, I was extremely surprised that in public health, right, where we're all about everyone's well-being, that there would be expressions of a population that's like forgotten, or that's been discarded. And so that has been my experience. When I think about how has this shaped my work, I just was kind of rolled into this space. And so I really didn't have any preconceptions or real experience other than a lived experience. So coming into this work, I'll just say that I was raised by two phenomenal stepdads. They both walked me down the aisle in my wedding 2 years ago. And I found that a privilege to have them both by my side, one from my first 10 years of life and the other in the second half. And really what I found myself was coming into a reality even at that moment, because I felt like I was on display for everyone to think about, why is two men walking her down the aisle? Who are they? Why does she have two dads? And, you know, just those kind of comments or thoughts that people are thinking that they may not say, but you know that it's on their mind. So I found that being my experience, and having to just come to terms with it and be okay with it. And through that experience, I think it empowers me for the work that I currently do. Because again, the Black family is very different. We come from a community. Our family is community. And I've had a really wealthy one. Moving on, I think about looking for solutions, right? Solutions on at the upstream. I look at what are some of the barriers that are happening to create some of the broken families and the broken fathers that we're working to serve, and what are some of those opportunities to develop solutions, because that is the face of the work I do. I am a female-facing practitioner doing fatherhood work. And so rather than looking at the end result and asking the father, how did you get here? I'm looking at the systems and the processes and things that are in place that I could really impact. And so I'm approaching my work from that space. If there had to be any advice, I would say, you know, examine yourselves, right? Examine yourselves. I wrote check myself, but I need to say examine yourselves, because the work that you're doing, no matter how many good fathers are out there, you're on the front lines for the fathers who aren't doing the work that, you know, Nye spoke of, right? And while we want to approach the work from that positive father involvement, that is the message that we're constantly bringing. The systems, the society, the culture that we're serving doesn't allow you to bring that message. They want to talk about what is not being done. So I just, you know, say definitely examine yourselves from your own experience, because whatever your experience is going to come through in your work. It's going to come through in your advocating for the dads who you're looking to serve. And so I just think that's all very critical and important. And then the reconciliation that Brianna spoke about, only thing I wanted to add to that is reconciling or reconciliation for the Black family as well. So thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Joaquina. Melissa?
Oh man, it's so hard to go after such profound statements and contributions. And I mean that with all sincerity. So the first part of the question, what surprised you? You know, my responses really closely mirror Avis's. Did I pronounce your name right, BFF? Avis, okay. Because so for me, what was shocking is the narrative that, you know, Black fathers are all of the things negative. It was shocking only because of the fact that the literature is perpetuating this story. So it's not just conversations that we are having, you know, amongst ourselves. There is literature to back this up. That was shocking. And quite frankly, it was frightening. And then I also experienced some, you know, like side eyes, like, why are you even interested in this work? You already know what the deal is. Black fathers are trifling, they're this, they're that, and the other. Well, here's the internal conflict for me. Even though my father was absent, I didn't meet my father for the first time. So from childhood, my entire life went by until I met my dad for the first time. But in the meantime and between time, I did have the benefit of, you know, like neighborhood fathers. You know, Dr. Murray was talking about the alternatives, if you will, to fathering in the Black community. And so, you know, I grew up in church with very hands-on and engaged Black men. And by the way, let me put my research in context. I looked specifically at the impact of fatherlessness on Jamaican women. And so I know that most of my fellow scholars here, their research is rooted in African-American fathers and fathering and the family dynamic, but there are so many different ways that the African diaspora has manifested itself. And so for me, growing up in a Jamaican household, in a really Caribbean community, again, I was no stranger to Black men being involved directly or indirectly. Also, I will say I have 3 brothers, 2 older ones and a little brother. And all 3 of my brothers have kids. All 3 of them have daughters. And while I wish that I grew up as a daddy's girl, I still wish that. I am so proud that I get to see that phenomenon through my brothers. And it's ironic because the other day, you know, Facebook memories will remind you of things. And Facebook memories reminded me of a post from 9 years ago. My niece was over at the house visiting and she was driving me crazy because she kept saying, my daddy can do this and my daddy can do that. And I'm like, well, he knows how to do that because I taught him. This is my little brother. But I was just so proud that my niece had the understanding that her daddy is a superhero. And, you know, he's not an absentee father, but regardless, I was proud that my brother and my other 2 brothers are the counter narrative to what the literature is saying. And so the advice that I would give to Black women doing this work is to, as Ava said, be unapologetic. In my instance, because I grew up without a father and I'm single and I don't have kids, people come up with all kinds of reasons to attempt to discredit my work. Unfortunately for them, I'm not the type that you can really just discredit. So, you know, I'm going to keep on doing my work. And I am not going to allow any sort of pathological labels to be attached to my work. No, I do not have daddy issues. In fact, I really love and celebrate and uplift Black fathers and recognize that they are in fact essential to the Black family dynamic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Brianna, are we going to go to the next question? All right. So we've touched on this, giving your personal and professional experiences. What are your recommendations for changing the narrative? And we just had an awesome action planning session here in Atlanta around Fathers Matter. And one of the dads said, not changing the narrative, but we're reclaiming the narrative. We're taking back our narrative. So what are your recommendations for reclaiming the narrative in a way that shifts us as a society from a place of simply saying Black fathers play an essential role in the lives of their children and families to acting as though they do? And I'm going to shoot that question to Azawya.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Rollins. So I think that the way we bridge the gap between what we say and what we do that by tackling our belief system. So someone already mentioned this, that, you know, what we believe to be true about Black men and Black fathers is going to come out in our work and our speech. And so we have to remind ourselves that our narratives and our stories will stem from that. And I love this question because it makes me reminisce on when I first started my dissertation in grad school. I knew that I wanted to research something in regards to Black fathers. I didn't know exactly what. And so I went to the library and I just started reading books written by Black men in the areas of Black manhood and Black fatherhood. And I came across a book. It was called The Assassination of the Black Male Image by Dr. Earl Hutchinson, I believe. And it was written in like 1994. The cover had like Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, a lot of, prominent figures from the 90s. So in the first couple of chapters, he makes this case that Black women have not only been complicit in the assassination of the Black male image, but that we have been the ringleaders in it. And I remember being really offended by that statement. And that was my first reaction. And then I think over the weeks after I read that book, I started to think about, what do I believe to be true about Black men and Black fathers? And so I did this little exercise where I wrote down some things I believe to be true. And then I challenged myself to defend it. Where did this come from? Do you have, facts to back this up? Did this come from media? Where does it stem from? And I was really shocked to find that a lot of the things that were in my head about Black men and Black fathers were not based in reality. They weren't based on my experiences. They were based on what I'd read, what I'd seen. And that shocked me because, as a researcher, you don't want to do harm to your target population. You want to assist. And so that has shaped my work from there on out, in the sense that whenever I write something or do anything actionable in this field, I want the perspective, I want the lens of Black men to help inform it, because as a Black woman, I have been subject to these, negative stereotypes. And it's surprising because, as we all have said, we have Black fathers, Black husbands, brothers, cousins. How is it that I was so susceptible to these narratives? And I thought, if I am vulnerable to them, then others who are outside of our communities have to be vulnerable to them as well. So that's how I became really fascinated with narratives. And I did that work on my dissertation. So I want to start by saying that there are 3 different levels of narratives, and there's a different strategy for each one. So the first is individual level narratives. So those are the stories we tell ourselves about the target population and what we believe to be true. And so I would encourage everyone on the call to do that exercise that I did. Think about what you believe to be true about Black men, and then make yourself defend it. As we are continuing to do this work, I really don't want us to be complicit in recreating and reproducing those negative stereotypes in the work that we're doing. So that on an individual basis, I think that would be really important. And then that second level in terms of narratives is organizational narratives. So what do organizations who work with Black fathers, what stories do they tell? And I am been working for the past 3 years as a consultant to fatherhood organizations across the nation. And I can always tell the difference between a fatherhood-friendly organization and a fatherhood-focused organization. There are organizations that have, historically served women and children. And then let's say a fatherhood grant comes out and they win a grant and now they're serving fathers, but do you really understand the needs of that target population? In organizations like that, I really think a cultural shift has to take place. And so I think it would be important to reach out to consultants and researchers and fatherhood practitioners who are fatherhood focused to do that shift. I recently spoke with one of the project directors for a grantee organization. They are originally like a domestic violence organization. And one of their board members came in and saw all the brochures and programs and things that they had for fathers and was really upset by it, and did not understand why fathers were being prioritized. So in an organization like that, there needs to be, some type of cultural shift that happens. And I think it needs to be intentional. And I'll wrap up by talking about institutional narratives. So at the policy level, what is being said about fathers and Black fathers in general. So I'll just say when it comes to low-income Black fathers, they are definitely characterized as the undeserving poor, right? There is this deadbeat narrative that's out there that everybody on the call is aware of. And I was really, it kind of hit me in a different way when the pandemic first occurred in March and those first stimulus checks rolled out. Fathers who had back child support did not get that assistance. And I found it to be really interesting that in the middle of a pandemic, that Black fathers, low-income fathers, were still seen as undeserving of assistance. And I thought that that was just such a, I don't know, it was a moment of clarity for me about how important my work is and how it is essential that we fight to tackle, you know, some of these discriminatory practices against them. So I have a lot more to say, but I will stop there because I want some other sisters to chime in on that question.
Absolutely. Erica, we haven't heard from you.
Sure. So I'd like to co-sign on everything Azawya said, not only what she said about challenging our beliefs, but also the earrings. They're amazing. But what I will say is I think that there is a gift and there's something really wonderful about the art of storytelling. And I think we have really, as researchers, as those working in the community, you know, as providers, us being able to structure and tell our stories about fathers and the roles that they play in the lives of families and their children is really important. And I think that that can help dispel this idea of fathers just being almost like a supplement and not a requirement. So I think this art of storytelling is important. I also think collaboration is really important. Just looking at all of the folks who are on this call, we can work together and we should be working together in all areas to build this. And there's something in, it's a movement, right? And so if we're working together, if we're using our expertise and we're coming together, I think that that's the best way to really move this narrative along. And I think the third piece would be having someone be able, or several people be able to reel you in, right? Not only your ideas or your beliefs, but challenge you on the way in which you are creating to help create this narrative, or maybe you're hindering the narrative. And so I'm thinking of the mentors that I've had. So I went in my doc program, I was in St. Louis and actually was had a mentor in the Father Support Center. And so it was wonderful to have Howard Sullivan there. He would meet with me every month and I would tell him my ideas about fatherhood and the research says, and he'd stop me and say, yeah, that's cute, the research, but what about the work? I'm gonna bring a father in here who will show you this. Cleo, get this man in here. I want him to tell Erica the story. And he would do that with even just those who were working there. So I think that's important. Having researchers like Dr. Waldo Johnson, I know that he's mentored Brianna in the past and we've been at conferences where we'll have conversation and he reels us in. What is your work? How is it impactful? What are you not thinking about? What can you include that brings this work forward? And so I think all of those pieces are really important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's so awesome. And we're going to go to Felicia.
What they said.
Ditto.
What they said, ditto, really. I mean, they hit it out of the park. I was looking at my notes and I was like, I agree. But I do think that it is definitely important to continue to counter the narrative and to allow, when we look at, to just talk about research a little bit, I think sometimes when we look at fatherhood research, especially as it relates to fathers in different sorts of family formations, a lot of times we hear from the voices of moms. So if you really peel it down and look at the sample, look at the data, it's really more of mothers telling father stories. So I think going forward, we always have to account for that and allow fathers to let us know what their lived experiences are in whatever it is that we're exploring. I think that that is critical, that is key to having at least a way to change the narrative through their voices. And I think as researchers, we have the potential power to really do that in a way that is unique. I would also say, and I think that Erica spoke about this as well, that partnerships are very important, I think, in changing how we view Black fathers, how we view Black families. I think that there can be some unique opportunities to not only leverage academic power, but social services powers, community power, in order to really impact not only these children, but these families, right? I think that we can't really be so siloed as we tend to operate. So the academics stick with the academics, the practitioners stick with the practitioners. That's really not a way to take apart these systems that Joaquina spoke about, right? We have to look at it from these various different ways. So I would say that, going forward, a kind of call to action for all of us in whatever discipline, whatever profession we find ourselves, where we have some sphere of influence, to think about how can you bring others to the table to talk about this in a way that aligns with not only uplifting Black fathers, but empowering Black mothers and Black children. So that would be my call to action for all of us, is to figure out, and no matter what career that you're in, because I have friends on here that have nothing to do with social services, but if you're in banking, what way can you help to bring that light into, where you work? Chase, I don't know. But I think that it is going to take that sort of effort for us to really change that cultural narrative, because fatherhood is all about cultural expectations. If we peel it back, it is about cultural expectations.
Absolutely. Brianna, do you want to weigh in? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'll just say really quickly that one thing resonated with me that Felicia just mentioned, and that is the need to not be siloed. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to do through the network. As you can see, we're a mixture of researchers as well as practitioners. And we know in social work, we often talk about how research informs practice and practice informs research, and how we can't do the work that we do as researchers without practitioners, without those in the policy arena. It takes a multitude of individuals to speak into this whole notion of the Black family and Black fathers. And so, there's a lot of assumptions about who can engage in scholarship. And we know that, we're called the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. And so we might get that and say, oh, they're just researchers. But we're really trying to expand and broaden that definition of scholarship so that it is inclusive, because we know that we can't do this work alone. And so I definitely agree that that's one of the ways in which we can shift the narrative, is by understanding that we all have a role to play in this.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a part of what Joaquina and I are working on here in Atlanta, pulling together multiple sectors, business, like Felicia said, business, faith-based, civic organizations, community activism, bringing them all together, because everyone has some family that they come from. And so they have different ideas about what family and fatherhood should look like. So what is it that you're doing within your sector that can promote or support father involvement here in the city? And so that's what it takes. People, like you all said, checking yourself, check yourself, check the work that you're doing personally, but also, as Azawya talked about, looking at your organization. What are some of those different policies or programs that are in place that really support or not, father involvement? And then those institutional types of policies. We do what's called a father-friendly checkup, and it has 4 different dimensions for each organization to kind of look through and see, even, beyond the institutional, organizational, and institutional, but community engagement. How does the community view your organization or program? Is it father focused or father friendly? As Azawya said, so, we really have a lot to do in changing the narrative, but it can be done if each person doesn't look at it as, a lot of times we think about changing the narrative in such a big way, like there's nothing that I can do, to change these cultural norms and things. But if we just start with us, just start with where we are and changing our own practice and beliefs, we can get really far. So, and working together. Anyone else want to touch on this particular question before we move to our Q&A?
I'm looking for a Q&A.
All right. I'm for the people. People said do Q&A. Let's do Q&A. There are a couple that were throughout. So Brianna, do you want me to just read them from the top and going through? All right.
Yep.
Let me see.
You can just ask their questions, I guess, if they're in the chat.
Yeah, you can absolutely. Please unmute. This isn't a webinar where you can't unmute yourself. You can unmute and talk. I see Kelly has a question. Are there any models of parenting or resources that you would suggest that promote a more African-centered model of fathering or parenting rather than the European white supremacist models that are typically uplifted? Any authors, podcasts, influencers you would suggest related to this topic? We had this very question on one of our meetings, and the effective Black parenting curriculum was shared. That is one of a few that are evidence-based. And so that's one model or resource that I know of, effective Black parenting.
We need more. That's part of, that's an area, a gap area where there could be some synergy between, you know, academics and practitioners and people who actually parent.
Parents,
I
yes.
agree with that totally. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking to myself, clearly, you know, our next meeting we need to have a conversation around this and be very, very, very intentional about how we'll contribute to practice and research.
And I just wanted to say that I think it's really important what was being said about Black fathers being spoken to directly and capturing their lived experiences and capturing their narrative, because so much of what we know is by proxy. So I'm tremendously interested in what does uprooting white supremacist ideology look like in parenting in Black families, and as a part of that is where that question's coming from. Like, because I just think that all that I know is European and white supremacist centered. And I'm sure that, you know, our ancestors had some ancestral wisdom and knowledge that I really want to be reconnected back to. And so I'm just throwing that out there. If that's an interest of anybody, you can message me and we'll dream together.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are a lot of rites of passage programs, things like that, to try to, like you said, connect us back to more Afrocentric and African-centered philosophies and ways of doing things. So
I just want to say, shout out to Dr. Lemons. She's amazing. Like, I cannot, like, I'm a nerd. My husband proposed to me in a library that tells you everything you need to know about us. And like, I am lit up inside like a Christmas tree, hearing you all talk and reading the chat box. Like, this is like, my brain is going in 19,000 different directions. So Dr. Lemons, you are the greatest of all time. That's all I'm gonna say.
She is the GOAT.
I have a question for Dr. Buckley. I mean, you guys spoke, of course, from an academic perspective on fatherhood. I guess as a father, you have to take this down to the grassroots, right? How does it go from day to day? So from a social policy perspective, how can what you guys done your research and all the stuff you've done apply to the courts and all the other places that will change how fathers interact with their children on a day-to-day basis? That's a big one. Courts have a huge impact on what happens here.
I think I like to answer that from a practitioner perspective, if I could.
Please do, because that's my brother, and I'm really biased when it comes to it. I'm like, let me handle it.
Yeah, so I think you just have to work it. And so, you know, what I've done here is just be present And when I'm working in the court system, I'm stellar at what I do. They give me a father, I turn him back around, we work with him. He goes back to the court and tells them, hey, that program was dope, right? I had a judge on a call with me during one of our sessions, and he said to me, Avis, I want to thank you for the thank yous that I heard from the fathers about how they came to your program. I didn't even know these guys were saying that. But he's like, they thank me for sending them. I had a judge get someone out of jail who had a bad criminal history in gang. He brought 3 guys home. He was like, they all belong to the gang together. I'm gonna bring them home together, give them to you. Let's see what you can do. And we just do what we do. The magic is that we love our brothers, right? And we do the work because we love our brothers. When they walk in the room, they feel it. Even my young men who are 16 years old, we refer to them as Mr., because they need to have that respect and honor in their lives. But I think you just continue from a practitioner's perspective. Now, here's the deal. I do need some of these researchers to help me out, right? Because I need to be able to tell the story from the research perspective as well. And that portion of what we do, we have not necessarily researched it all. But it is one of those things that you just stay consistent. You just stay persistent in the court. Wherever Black men are, that's where I am. I'm persistent at the club. I'm persistent at the strip club. You want to come to this group? Just be persistent.
So I appreciate your real approach. I really, really do. In my brother's perspective, and I will maintain your confidentiality, of course, Constantine. But here you see the systems that were referenced earlier have contributed to the adversarial relationships that exist. We know this. And that's exactly my brother's lived experience. This is a man who will do anything and everything, but the court system aligns with mothers. I think we have to be honest about that. This is a man who has done nothing to deserve to be separated for any period of time from his child, and he was. During she's still a baby, she's only 2, but simply because of the mother's word, the court aligned with him. And so the work that you're talking about, Avis, yes, we do have to be in all of those places. That's true. But we do have to really strongly advocate for fathers who have been abused by the systems that are in place. Because through the abuse of the fathers, children continue to be abused as well.
And hi, everyone. My name is Sherry Tillis. And I don't know if you all don't mind me chiming in reference to the court system, you have to fight the system with the system's best. So what our agency was able to do is we added attorneys onto our staff team. And so we provide free legal assistance to our fathers. And we assist them with filing all of their court paperwork and give them all the services they need up to the point of representing them in court. And if they would like for us to, our attorney can do so. The way we were able to attract our attorney is she was a former judge that had left the bench. And the other thing that we do is we actively make it a point to go and advocate in our nation, in our state's capital, on behalf of fathers. Anytime there is the word father uttered out of one of our state senators' mouths, any type of hearing in reference to child support and an adjustment of those laws, we're there in the room. We've also been active with creating and writing Senate bills so that we are writing the narrative and we are writing into law the way that our fathers should be treated through the court system. So you actually have to have practitioners that can fight the courts on the courts level. Our attorney now, when they see her walk into the courtrooms, the opposing attorneys actually get excited because they know we put so many resources behind our fathers. They say things like, oh, we know we're going to get child support now. And we walk in the room like, and we know we're going to get visitation or custody. And that's usually our goal, especially when there is the chance of our African-American children being placed into foster care. So I thank you so much for what this group is doing. I'm looking forward to just hearing more and being a part of the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. That's a trailblazer right there that we just heard from. I don't know if you all know, but You need to find out who Ms. Tillis is if you don't know. But yes, this is so critical, not to just, have research for research's sake. We need the data to show the evidence of what we're doing. And we also need the advocacy, going to the courts, not just to, be involved in the systems, but to change those systems. And so I know with our planning that we're doing here in Atlanta is working with those judges to see, what are some things that we can do to reduce arrears, to reduce sentences, do alternative sentencing, all these different things, working with those judges, who can change a lot of the things that are happening negatively with our fathers in those systems. And then also, like she said, going and writing legislation, so that's really critical, really critical.
And I wonder if inviting judges and also those who are a part of the court system to join a board or to be a part of a service or a program, because then they get the message, they're understanding it, and then they get to use their capital then to go to talk to the people that they work with about the need for fathers, the need for policies to change the discrimination that happens when fathers are going to the courts, and trying to fight for their rights to be a part of their child's life. So I think this whole capital, knowing where the capital is, and then having those folks use their capital to help spread the word.
Someone also asked a question I saw in the chat with regard to the impact of trauma on paternal responsibilities and engagement with children. And so I was wondering if anyone wanted to speak to that. I will say that I actually have a couple of my collaborators on the call. One of them is Matthew Jackson at, sorry, I'm putting you in the spotlight, Matt, for a second. Matthew Jackson at Cal State, Los Angeles. And we are currently in the process of looking at some of the I wouldn't necessarily say we're looking at trauma, but we're looking at things like experiences with racism and things that we know are very real for Black men, and how that influences their physical and mental health outcomes. And we know that when our fathers are not at their best physically and mentally, it then follows that they are not going to be, or may not be, as present in the lives of their children as they would like to be, but that is to be expected. Many of our Black men do endure various different forms of trauma on a daily basis, right? And so we know that these traumas that we experience on a daily basis are the very things that lead to health disparities. And so we know that these things are very real for our fathers, and yet, they're expected to be present, be involved, and be all the things that we know more privileged fathers are expected to be. And so the playing field, we know, is not level. And we know that these things are happening with our fathers. And it's just time for us to realize that they're not operating from the same set of resources as other fathers are and other individuals are. And so I think we do have to take these things into consideration. And if we can have some research that can help to really drive this point home, is always helpful. And so we're definitely doing the work in this area and plan to collect some nationwide data. That's the other thing that we're really lacking. We know folks like data, but one of the things that we're really lacking with regard to Black fathers is a coordinated effort that gives us some data to understand the state of Black fathers nationwide, not just in pockets and in different states, but nationwide data that can help us to really tell the story. We talked a lot about narrative, and we know how important narrative is in making any case, whatever the case might be. And so we really need some data to help us to tell this story. And so that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to this summer, is this data collection project that we're going to be working on, that's looking at various different predictors of physical and mental health outcomes of Black fathers nationwide.
Can I just piggyback really, really quickly? In my research, so I have expanded, even though fatherhood or fatherlessness is my primary area of research, I've expanded it to include trauma work, because my belief as it emerged from my research is that fatherlessness is a trauma. And so one of the things, the theoretical framework in particular that I looked at was attachment theory and how attachment impacted the lives of these women. And so what I found was that, as you can imagine, all of them reported some type of trauma as a result of the fatherlessness. And so inherently, the work, I forget who it was that asked a question in the chat box, but inherently this work is steeped in trauma, and it needs to emerge as trauma-informed work.
Yeah, and what I've really been appreciating here lately is language around healing-centered work, that we sometimes get so caught up in the trauma, and just talking about that. And, you know, someone used this term trauma porn the other day, you know, that we're just reliving and engaging in that. But it really needs to be healing-centered, moving people past what they experience to a place of healing. So, so yes, it's so necessary to do. I'm looking for more questions.
Yeah. Yes, Ed says he thinks it's important that we focus on fathers as men first and what they've experienced in life as men before we can focus on the fathering role. We need to help them heal the wounds of just being a Black man in society and help establish the healthy identities of being a Black man before we can support them in their role as fathers. Exactly. Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit more, Ed, if you feel like talking?
Sure. Hey, hello, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, in the work that we do in Chicago, this was a lesson learned, because when we first started Power Fathers, it was all about their fathering role and the responsibilities of being fathers to their children. And what we heard a lot was that many of them came to us feeling broken, feeling disillusioned, and giving up because the focus was always on this transaction of what we need from them as fathers in their responsibilities to their, the co-parents, to their children, but nobody was focusing on their needs as men and the things that they've gone through that led them to be in the positions. And before they were fathers, they were men, they were boys. And so we switched our approach to really be, before we start the fathering piece, is healthy self-esteem, self-value, identity, who you are as a Black man, what's your purpose, what gifts and talents can you use to improve the world, yourself and the world around you. And we immediately saw a change in our dads in terms of then being able to focus on father engagement, because we were addressing their primary needs and that foundational need, oftentimes which has gone unaddressed or been abused or traumatized in many ways. And that then we saw greater outcomes, greater participation from dads. They stayed in the program longer, they had greater connectivity in the program by switching, making that small switch. And so I just wanted to add that in here.
Thank you, Ed, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I totally agree. So often, we are so ready to jump to, are you present? Are you providing? Are you there, for the kids? And we do often forget, just because I think we focus so much on the societal burden of child support, right? So we're so worried about child support and payment of child support and back child support and what it costs the society for fathers to be absent, that we forget that these are real people, right? These are real people that come to the table with real trauma, real experiences that have to be addressed in order for them to function in the most optimal way in the fathering role. And sometimes we forget, that it's often the real pain is ignored in a way that's just not helpful or healthy for the growth. And one of the things I was reminded of as I was doing my dissertation work, I thought about the fact that, just as children are growing, fathers are growing too, alongside them. And we forget that, and we just think about the father and his responsibilities. But we know that in the Black community and really across nationwide, it's not just unique to the Black community, it's fathers nationwide, that oftentimes men and women have children before they're ready. before they're fully developed, before they fully understand who they are and what their needs are. That is the reality. Not everyone enters the parenting role ready. I don't think anybody enters the parenting role ready. You can never fully be ready for what will happen down the road. And so fathers need that support. They need to know that that there's something out there for them to help them be their best selves alongside helping to grow and develop their children.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, that I have a lot of different pet peeves, but one of my pet peeve around this is this quote: "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." You all probably have heard it and saw it and probably thought, "Oh, that's nice," but it bothers me because it makes it seem as if it's not worthwhile to work with men who have experienced this trauma, you know? And so that's one of my pet peeves, that particular quote: "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Yes, it may be easier, but it's worthwhile to work with these men and address their needs.
And let me just chime in for a moment and just say that in order to repair these men, we have to get to the root causes of where they're coming from, right? So they're coming from these broken homes, which are not by husband and wife. We know this. So that means that we have to address the home that they're coming from. And primarily that home life is, who's in the home?
Mm-hmm.
Who's in the home taking care of him? I'm asking.
Well, it could be, I mean, you know, it depends on their family structure.
Right, it depends on our family structure, but primarily it's normally mom.
Well, I think it's normally mom reported on anything that would be, you know, government censored. Because in my experience, fathers are there, but here's what happens. They don't say that they're there, because if they say they're there, now we have a release of services. You know, you can't get this, you can't get that. It's a reporting. I mean, our systems are developed almost like they're the police. And so the systems the system promotes the disconnection of the African-American family. We know
Absolutely.
that. So my fathers are in those homes. My fathers are living in those housing developments. But when you ask them where they live, they give me their cousin's address. But I know they're there. I still know where to find them at their girl's house with the baby, because that's where he is. So a lot of times, even that narrative for me and the work that I've done, just as a practitioner in my area, I'm gonna speak from what I know, that's not my norm. My norm is not that these fathers are absent. They're not missing. They right there. Right. They're there. They're coming in. They sleeping. They living. But the system, they have to report to the system that they're not. And so I think that that's important to remember, that because of all the things that the Black man has, these Black men have to experience, it's hard for them. And my passion goes out to your brother, because I understand, I hear it every day. I get people that call me every day about systems and what to do with the system. And sometimes you got to say, you just got to wait. It's going to take you 2 years, you know, or 3 or 4. But imagine that as a man, you've already an African-American man, you already live in a racist society, you already have trauma. They experience trauma just because they're a Black man. And then on top of that, it's just over and over and over again. So we have to really kind of, again, recreate that narrative and tell, I don't talk to my men from that they're absent. I say, I know you there, bruh. So let's figure this out. I know you're having a hard time in the relationship. So let's figure out how to navigate this relationship without the court. We do our own parenting plan. Take this to court with you. You already got
more mediation programs, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being there is not always about physical presence, because there you can talk with dads who have had fathers in the house, but they were emotionally absent, and that can be just as damaging to a father. So we have to, that's what I mean, we have to really be careful about being so monolithic in how we think about our families and our fathers, because it can, I think it contributes to that narrative that we're trying to change.
Can I speak just in response to my name is DeAndre Wilson. I'm sorry. I was I grew up without a father. And I am now a father, and I'm starting an organization for fathers because I understand the importance of fathers. But I think we have to look at this from a different point of view. And I understand that I was raised by a single mother. So I know the pain, and I've been a single father. So I've seen both sides of the coin. And I want to give back, and I want to help those that I feel need the help. But I think to get a better understanding of why it is important, or to grasp, or if we're having trouble, or for those that are having trouble grasping the importance of fathers, all we have to look at are the suicide statistics for those children that are in single family homes. Now, the mothers are there and they're doing the best they can, but statistics have shown that those children are high suicide. They have high suicide rates. If that isn't motivation enough to get behind the movement to try to help or facilitate or get fathers more involved in these households, then I don't know what is. We have to look past some of these things we hold against each other, men, women, these so-called quote unquote gender wars we're having and battling, and we have to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture are the children. The children are suffering. And so research has shown that with fathers involved, suicide rates in children are reduced, are minimal. So if anything that we need to kind of channel our energy and kind of, get on the side of fathers and kind of, put the wars and the differences aside, it's definitely that. And I just wanted to add that little tidbit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really quickly, I just wanted to ask if Dr. Perry just made a good point. We have Dr. Armin Perry with us, and he's been a great supporter of the network. And I really wanted him to speak really quickly. He made a great point. He said that researchers also don't have good measures of quantity, to quantify fathers' involvement. So there's a disconnect between what fathers do and what programs measure. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm driving, so I was trying to avoid having background noise and whatnot. Yeah, I think that one of the issues that happens in research is that, again, as you mentioned, dads are involved in ways that researchers oftentimes don't account for, right? And so oftentimes what programs want is they want dads to be involved in their formal programming. And so if dads aren't around when they're taking attendance, then it looks as if the dads aren't involved. But if you take a more nuanced look, you can find that dads are involved, just like Ava said, in pickups and in drop-offs and more informal ways. But if those aren't the ways that researchers are accounting for what they would call involvement, there's a major disconnect there. The other thing I wanted to say just really quickly to the points that you all are making is that just yesterday I was telling a reporter that I think one of the biggest issues facing Black fathers is America's inability to stop conflating non-resident with disengaged or uninvolved, right? Because we don't have a social script for what non-resident fathering looks like that there's wide agreement on. People sort of presume and assume that if you aren't married and if you don't live in the same house with your kids, then that must mean that you aren't involved, and nothing could be further from the truth. The CDC has done work that debunks that, and many of us on this call know that that's not true, but that hasn't permeated the sort of the broader society, and people still are conflating and using non-resident and uninvolved or absent interchangeably. And that's something that, in terms of narrative, somebody talked about narrative a few minutes ago, that's one of the biggest pieces that I think this group is as positioned as anyone to help change, because that's one of the things that is used to help move forward and keep programs, policies, and eligibility criteria sort of away from the ways that we know that dads are involved in continuing to sort of perpetuate this myth or this narrative or this sort of stereotype of Black dads as disengaged, uncaring, and irresponsible, and so on and so forth. So those are the things that I'd like to share while I'm pulling into my driveway now. Thank you all for allowing me to speak, and I appreciate all the work that this group is doing. Look forward to collaborating as much as I can in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Perry.
Hey, Brianna, can I say something real quick? What's up, Brianna? I just want to say, first of all, I want to just say this has been amazing. I appreciate all the scholars that are on this call. It's just, and I want to affirm you. I want to affirm the work you're doing because I think it's truly amazing. And plus, Brianna's my homie, so I had to show up for her, right? One of the things that I definitely wanted to say is here's a personal story that I think is missing from a lot of the things when we talk about Black fathers. Right? My parents divorced when I was 3, and they had joint custody, and so my father was actively involved in my life from up until the age of 10, right? For various circumstances that he had, that he just couldn't keep up with the relationship, and so my mother really never defined herself as a single mother. Because if you ask her today, she'll always state, I had a village who helped raise you. And part of that village and that male that played that father role was my grandfather, was my uncle, right? Very prominent men in whom my life, while me and my father became disconnected, that maleness and that male role model remained constant. So to be honest, I never felt like I was lacking something, right? And so even when I was an elementary teacher, I was very clear and talking with a lot of my Black single mothers, and they often said, he doesn't have a father. And the question I asked was, do you have a brother? Do you have a cousin? Do you have an uncle? Right? Because sometimes we get this mixed up where it has to be this father thing, right? And there's often amazing Black men in your family that can do that same work. And so when we think about this notion of father, are we having a more nuanced conversation about what that is, right? I love what Dr. Murray said earlier, right? We got to get this European mindset, right? When we talk about the Black family and the Black tradition, right, it was a collective notion. Part of why we have the absence of missing fathers is because we're trying to mimic what the European world is doing. And so therefore we've lost that sense of collectivity. So we've now tried to do this nuclear thing when really African civilization, if we take it all the way back, that's not how Black folk rocked out in the beginning, right? And so I think when we have this whole conversation, oftentimes my story, I'll be very honest, whether it's from a Black male voice researcher or a Black female voice researcher, my voice is often missing. I had the dynamics of being in a divorced family, having a relationship with dad that went south, and being in a collective notion. My story has never been told. I've never picked up a book and saw it or read it or even thought about it, right? And so my question now becomes, in this collective, how are you having those nuanced approaches to fatherhood? Because I engage with my fellow brothers all the time who are probably people who you would want to research and probably people who you would want to be connected with. But to be honest, I have to do the work with them as a fellow brother for them to even make an entry point to you. So even if you saw them at a church or a mosque, at a strip club, they're not even ready to do the work to begin to talk to you. And so I pose the question, how can we support you and help you be allies in this work? Because a lot of the things that you, and a lot of the things that you're talking about, right? I have a good brother that's going through hell with his ex-wife in terms of custody, and he's shown up for his daughter, right? In every instance of the word. I know her, they have a beautiful relationship, and now that relationship is being damaged because of, what's happening in the relational sense, right? And so he's somebody that you would probably need to talk to, but would never have access to you all except through somebody like me. Right. And so I'm just wondering, as a Black male scholar who loves what you're doing and wants to support the work, how do we not only affirm you, and I'm very clear, not co-opt the work, because you guys are together for a reason. And as a Black male, I want to support, not co-op, right? And that's very important to me, because I think you guys have a unique voice and unique stance. And so I'm gonna shut up, Brianna, but.
Thank you so much, Kimai. I really appreciate it. I always love Kimai's passion. As you can see, he's a very passionate person. I love that about him. But to answer your question, Kimai, we are in the process of talking about and developing a male advisory board. And that's something that I did want to say earlier, is that we know that we can't do this work alone. And so we definitely, and we don't want to do this work in isolation. We realize that we need male voice in the work that we do, and to bring that nuance and to get, roll our sleeves up and get granular and really get down into the details, because as Dr. Perry alluded to earlier, we're really scratching the surface a lot of times in the research and the work that we do. We don't have the proper measures. We're not asking the right questions. We're not, there's so much that we can do to get the narrative right, that we have yet to do. And there are so many things that we don't understand, particularly as it relates to the fathers that don't live in the home, because we don't fit that nuclear family structure, as you mentioned, oftentimes. And there are these other unique nuances about the Black family that the world needs to know and understand, is that we have our own sort of structure going on that works for us, that works for our community, that works for our people, that has historically allowed us to thrive in our context when we don't have a more oppressive forms of family structure that are placed on us. And so we really need to get an understanding of that. And so we would love to have men to join us and to be on an advisory board to help us to think through these things and to just collaborate with us and work alongside us. And so I'm pleased, if you would like to work alongside us, please put your name and information in the chat, let us know, and we'll download the chat and we'll reach out to all of those that are interested in working with us. We would love to have you.
Can I say one other thing? I'm sorry. I am that person. Whoever posted about white patriarchal mimicry, like I went crazy on the inside, because so I had posted a question earlier that was talking about, is anybody doing any research around how Black men construct the idea of masculinity and manhood? Because again, that's another, it's like an offshoot of what we're talking about, but I'm really interested in that. And that is, I just think it's like, I'm reading a book right now. I know we're running around throwing all these books out there, and I was messaging Dr. Johnson earlier in the chat. And so the book is by Tommy J. Curry. It's called The Man Not. If you haven't read it, I would really suggest that you read it, because it's like destroying everything that I thought I knew about Black men and really making me question where are these assumptions coming from? And so it's forcing me to deconstruct what I think about masculinity and manhood, and it's making me recognize that there really is a gap in the literature. We don't hear directly from Black men about how they create these ideas. And I don't think that these ideas rest in what the media would propagate, which is, gangster life and urban hood bratness and being ratchet. Like, I think that there's more to Black masculinity, and there's more to Black manhood. And that is of particular interest to me because I have a son. And so I want to make sure that he is learning the right thing. But if I can take 1 second, I just want to read this quote because it destroyed me from The Man Not. Dr. Curry says, we have these phobias which interpret Black men as patriarchal, violent, and indifferent to the suffering of others as a fact. Why do our imaginings of Black males from slavery to this present day begin with these associations? Black males are thought to reproduce and desire rather than resist and disown the white patriarchy of the American empire. What motivates the scholar to interpret all political activity by Black men as their attempts to mimic the white male patriarch instead of their efforts to redefine, recreate, and reconfigure Black manhood? Y'all, I just died. I said, Jesus, you just come back now. Hallelujah. Take me to, I died. I can't stop thinking about that quote. And that's the kind of work that I want to be a part of, is recreating and rediscovering and reimagining these constructs, all of it, everything everybody's talking about. I'm on board. This is amazing. So I'm going to stop talking now, but thank you so much for listening.
And Kelly, as a Black man, that's the work that we have to do, really unpacking masculinity. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I've had to do it in my own life when brothers would look at me and be like, "Why are you crying?" "Cause I'm hurt, bruh."
Right?
I'm feeling bad. Like, this really hurt me. But I've seen my grandfather cry. I've seen my uncle cry. So it wasn't disassociated with your maleness or being a man or being masculine or being strong or hard. It was that I saw brothers feel. And so me growing up like that, you know, I feel. And so part of it, and so I was constantly growing up challenging traditional forms of masculinity because people assumed what they thought was masculine, and I was doing something completely different. It was like, hey, we ain't got a beef. Let's talk about it. What? You ain't ready to throw hands? No, like, look, what's good, right? And so challenging those sometimes forms of masculinity, that a lot, Black men, we got to do the work on that, and that's us having conversations with each other and redefining what masculinity is all about, right?
Love it. So excited.
Thank you. Well, I know we're a little bit over time, but I would be remiss if I did not have the real GOAT to say something during this call, and that is Dr. Waldo Johnson. He is among us, and he is one of my mentors in this field and just in the work that I do in general. And I respect and love Dr. Johnson so much and all that he has done for me to help me to get to this point where I am in life right now as a Black woman doing this work. And so, Dr. Johnson, if you just don't mind saying something very briefly to us.
So good evening. I thank Brianna and the leadership of the BFFs for the opportunity to join you this evening, but also to just sit and listen to this wonderful conversation that is emerging. I mean, I think one of the things that is important about this group is, even though you are raising issues that scholars and you aptly point out have largely been Black males and males in general, there've always been women at the table. And some of my early mentors in this work, although they don't, as you point out, they've not always gotten the recognition and the due that was appropriate, have been very inspirational to me. And I like to think that that has led me to be very open and engaging with respect to bringing other female voices, you know, to this work. I've appreciated, even with respect to the organization of this group, that you've made it a large tent. And one of the things that you have to always remember when you make it a large tent, there are always going to be different perspectives about how you think about these issues. I think the brother Wilson made a great point. We're never going to be able to tell the stories of everyone individually, you know, and there's a way in which Western research doesn't even allow us to do that. We can come close to it with qualitative approaches, but even qualitative approaches tend to organize themselves in a way where it may not be a single story, but it's not also an individual story. So I would applaud you to keep working at trying to do the work that allows for multiple voices to be at the table. Because even if they're minority voices, they are help to remind us that even as we come to what we may view as our masterpiece, we're not quite there yet. I too, like Armand and others and Ed, appreciate the fact that this is not just researchers, that it includes practitioners and policy scholars. You can't do it without everyone at the table. And to the extent that you're thinking about groups, even outside of those frameworks, that's really important. I like to, as it's been stated, to be a part in terms of supporting this work, you know, trying to also use whatever opportunities or influence I may have to lift up you as scholars, and not just as female scholars, but as fatherhood scholars, in this work. So please, I'll try to stay attentive to it, but always let me know if there are ways in which I can help to move this forward. Thanks again for a wonderful evening. I really do appreciate it. And I'm so proud of my mentee, Brianna. I must say that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. And as you've seen in the chat, shout out to the dads who have their baby girls and baby boys on screen with them. We see that they are very much so active and involved in the lives of their children. And so we are going to close out here. This has been a very invigorating conversation. So much has come from this, and I just thank everybody for hanging on with us and just continuing to engage in what has been a very rich dialogue. I just want to say that we will be following up with everyone and letting you know you're on our email list now. So we'll let you know when our next conversation will be. We're planning on doing something else in March for mental health awareness. We really want to have a conversation about men and mental health, particularly from the perspective of women and how we can support men when they are experiencing mental health challenges and what our role is in that. And so we are going to follow up with that conversation, and we'll follow up with everyone who has questions. We'll be sure to download the chat and really kind of look over it, review it, and make sure that we follow up with everyone that we didn't get the chance to do here. But please stay tuned with our work, and I think our website's been shared in the chat several times. So please do keep following us we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and all the platforms. Okay, so all the things, we're there. So please do follow us and continue to support us in our work. We appreciate it. You know, when you put things out there into the universe, you really don't know what the response will be. You don't know how others will react. And so we're just so thankful for your support. And this is our first event, and it's been great. And we're just encouraged. At least I know I'm encouraged to keep going and to continue on in this work. So thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Dr. L, that was amazing.
What'd you say?
That was amazing. Like,
look at Kiwan. Kiwan, you're so silly.
You know I love me some Brianna, man. Kelly, you was dropping some knowledge. I loved it, Kelly. You was dropping.
Thank you. I'm new to this, but I'm a nerd. So I'm so lit up on the inside. Like, my husband would be so excited that I got to talk to all y'all, because then I don't have to talk to him about this stuff, because he doesn't. He's like, baby,
nerd out. It's all good. It's all good. It's all
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
I'm going. I got to take care of my.
All right, Brianna, I'll holler at you.
Thank you, Kamai. Thank you so much.
Oh, man.